You've seen the photos. A massive steel boat somewhere in the North Pacific, gray water stretching in every direction, no land for 1,000 miles. And on that boat there are 60 people who haven't touched solid ground in 8 months. Not 8 days. 8 months. Here's the part that breaks people's brains when they first hear it. That boat isn't lost. It isn't stranded. It's exactly where it's supposed to be. It was designed never to come home. And the men and women on board aren't waiting to be rescued. They're sleeping, showering, eating, and getting paid on a vessel that treats the open ocean as a permanent address. There are 3 things about life on these boats that almost nobody on land understands. The first is how they sleep when the boat never stops. The second is how 60 people stay clean with almost no fresh water, and the third is the one that surprises everyone, which is why so many of these workers, given the choice, go back out again and again. By the end of this video, you'll never look at a piece of frozen fish in the grocery store the same way. So let's start with the most basic human need on a boat that runs 24 hours a day: sleep. On land, the day ends. The sun goes down, the shift clocks out, everyone goes home. On a distant water fishing vessel, none of that happens. The fish don't care what time it is. A factory trawler pulling nets in the Bering Sea is hauling, processing, and freezing catch around the clock because every hour that machinery sits idle is money burning. So the boat never sleeps, which means the crew can't all sleep at once either. The answer is the watch system. The crew is split into rotating shifts, often 6 hours on and 6 hours off, or in some operations a brutal pattern where deck crews work 16 or even 18 hours during a heavy run. That means your sleep doesn't line up with night. You might be crawling into your bunk at 10 in the morning while the guy in the bunk above you is just waking up for his shift. The boat is always half awake. And the bunks themselves are nothing like a bed. Picture a coffin-sized space stacked 2 or 3 high in a cabin shared by 4 to 8 people. The mattress has a lip or a rail called a lee cloth, and it's not for comfort. It's there so the ocean doesn't throw you onto the floor. In rough seas, a boat can roll 30 degrees side to side. Without something holding you in, you don't sleep, you get launched. Then there's the noise. Diesel engines the size of a small house, hydraulic winches, the processing deck grinding away one wall over, steel hull slamming into waves with a sound like a car crash, over and over all night. Experienced crews sleep through all of it. New crew lie there wide-eyed for the first week until exhaustion finally wins. Earplugs are standard. So is the ability to fall asleep in 90 seconds flat, because when you only have 6 hours and half of it gets eaten by your job running long, you learn to sleep the instant your head hits the pillow. But here's a problem most people never even think about. 60 people working hard, sweating, gutting fish for 16 hours on a boat in the middle of the ocean. How do they stay clean? Because there are no rivers out there, no tap. Just salt water in every direction, and salt water is the one thing you cannot drink, cannot cook with, and cannot shower in. For most of human history, this was the hard limit on how long a ship could stay at sea. You could only carry so much fresh water. Run out, and you turn back. That's it. What changed everything is a machine most people have never heard of. It is called a water maker, and it works on a principle called reverse osmosis. It takes seawater and forces it under enormous pressure, around 800 to 1,000 pounds per square inch, through a membrane so fine that the salt molecules physically cannot pass through. Clean fresh water comes out one side. Concentrated brine gets dumped back into the sea. A good marine unit can produce hundreds, sometimes thousands of gallons of drinkable water a day out of nothing but the ocean the boat is already floating in. This single piece of technology is the reason a fishing vessel can stay out for months. Without it, the whole thing collapses. But just because they can make water doesn't mean they waste it. Running a water maker takes fuel and energy, and the machine has limits. So showers on a fishing boat are short and they are rationed. We are talking a 2-minute rinse, sometimes a Navy shower, where you turn the water on to get wet, shut it off completely to soap up, then turn it back on for a final 30-second rinse. On smaller or older boats with no water maker at all, crews have gone days without a real shower, wiping down with a wet rag and a bucket. The bathroom, called the head, is cramped, communal, and constantly in motion. Brushing your teeth while the floor pitches 20 degrees is a skill you develop fast. Number 17. Meatloaf with tomato glaze and green beans. So they've solved sleep, they've solved water, but there's a third need, and it turns out to be the most important one of all for keeping a crew from falling apart. And it's not what you'd guess, it's food. And on a boat that never comes home, food is not just fuel, it's morale. It might be the single most important thing on the entire vessel after safety. Think about the conditions. You're cold, you're soaked, you're exhausted, you're thousands of miles from anyone you love, working the most dangerous job in America. Commercial fishing has a fatality rate many times higher than the national average for all workers, day after day, week after week. The one bright spot, the thing the entire crew looks forward to, is the meal. And every experienced captain knows it. There's an old saying in the fleet, a well-fed crew is a happy crew, and a hungry crew is a mutiny waiting to happen. That's why the cook is one of the most valued people on board. A bad cook can sink a whole season's morale. A great one is worth their weight in gold. The galley runs almost around the clock to feed crews on opposite shifts, so there's hot food and strong coffee available at 3 in the afternoon and 3 in the morning. The meals are huge and calorie-dense because deck crews burn an enormous amount of energy hauling gear in the cold. We are talking big breakfast, meat, potatoes, fresh-baked bread, pies, desserts. Comfort food on purpose. The supplies come from massive walk-in freezers and dry storage loaded before departure, enough to feed dozens of people for months. And here's where we finally answer the biggest question of all. How does a boat stay out for 8 months in the first place without ever docking? The answer is that the boat does not come to the supplies. The supplies come to the boat. It is called transshipment. Support vessels, basically floating gas stations and grocery stores, meet the fishing boat out at sea. They offload the frozen catch, top up the fuel, hand over fresh food, spare parts, and even rotate crew members on and off. The fishing boat never has to waste days steaming back to port and back out again. It just keeps fishing. That is what never coming home actually means. It is not a tragedy, it is a business model engineered down to the last gallon. Number 17. Meatloaf with tomato glaze and green beans. And now for the part that surprises everyone. Ask someone who's done a long season on one of these boats whether they'd give it up for a normal job on land, and a lot of them will tell you no, because out there the world gets simple. There's no traffic, no bills to open, no noise from the outside world. There's the work, the crew, the food, and the ocean. The money can be life-changing in a single season, and there's something about the silence on deck during a calm night watch, stars from horizon to horizon, no light pollution for 1,000 miles, that people say they chase for the rest of their lives. The hardest job in the world produces some of the most loyal workers in the world. That's not an accident. So the next time you see a bag of frozen fish in the freezer aisle, remember the boat it came from. A floating town that sleeps in shifts, drinks the ocean, and hasn't seen land in months. And the people on it, most of them, wouldn't have it any other way. Now I want to hear from you. Could you do it? 8 months at sea, no land. 6 hours of sleep at a time. Drop a yes or no in the comments. And if you have ever worked on a boat, tell us the longest you have ever been out. I read every single one. If you learned something today, hit like, subscribe for more, and I will see you on the next one.